Welcome back to Vectorworks 2013. This is episode 4A of the second year design series, and I'm James Russell. In this episode today we're going to look at some building construction materials such as walls, windows and doors. We're going to check out some of the additional attributes panel stuff that we can do, and we're also going to have a look at the basics of textures ready for lesson 5, which is presentation styles. So let's get right into it. I've already got open down here in my tool set. You can click on this little house, which is the building shell components. You'll see a lot of things: walls, windows, doors. One important thing to note is I'm currently using the Australian version of Vectorworks, which gives me the Windoor plugin. And I'm not sure if that's actually available in all other countries at the moment. I know during 2010 it certainly wasn't available. So what I'm going to do here is actually change my workspace across to the Spotlight Australia toolset, which I believe doesn't have the Windoor in it. It actually has the original door and window tool. There we go. So if you're working internationally, this is probably more your style, and I will discuss Windoor a little bit later on. But for now I'm going to stick with the original door and window tool. So I'm just going to close some of these up. There we go. So, starting straight off from this, the wall tool, it's got a couple of properties up the top here, and we're just going to run through them. It's basically a drawing style thing, so you can either do a left hand side wall, you can draw from the center of the wall, the right hand side of the wall, or you can do a custom spacing option here. And you can see there's a couple of toggle here's for the different wall types of the components that you can use, and an additional styling button. And if you click on this, you'll get a whole heap of options, such as the type of wall that you're putting in. You can change that to have plasterboard on the outside, double brick, all these kind of different options. You'll see if I drop this down, there's a few styles up here that already exist, you know, cavity bricks, concrete styles, stud, timber, metal, everything you could ever want. And normally for our purposes, particularly when I'm doing basic plans, I'll just leave it on the unstyled option and then change it when I feel appropriate. An important thing here is the overall thickness though. Just be aware that, you know, if you're using TV flats or something like that and representing them with a wall, obviously you want to just make them 70-75 mil depending on what you're using. Your overall thickness as well here for basic and standard walls is 150. So just keep that in mind, and there's a lot of componentry adding that you can do within that. So I'm just going to click OK and just start drawing this wall. So you can see the moment I start drawing, at the moment I'm selected on left hand side mode, and I'm obviously zoomed in a bit too close to this. That's better. So you can see it's just like the double line tool. It's just a click at points. So I'm just going to draw a very basic box here, and then we'll expand on that all the way back up. So the moment you link them together, you'll notice it says up here 4 walls. It's got some of the interesting details about it, and it's got the height mentioned here, 2.5 meters at the moment, with an offset and some boundary stuff going on. So to add on to a wall, you can just simply start drawing again anywhere. So I might start here, draw out. This might be a little cupboard of some variety, and back in again. And you can see it automatically tees up these sections of the walls here, so it's automatically joined and linked in. So if I come back, I can select individual components in that wall, or I could grab the entirety of the wall. Now they don't obviously have to be straight. You can do angular walls like this, and just link them back in as well. There are some instances when you mightn't have a wall join, particularly if you draw it outside. So here I'm going to draw this wall in. I'm just going to link that up to here, like so. Now I've drawn this independently, and then you might have a wall object that you want to join into a current wall component. So if I drag this over to here, if I can, grab that as an entire object. There we go. As I said, it's quite difficult to draw a wall incorrectly. But I've put that in place now, and I'd like these to join up. That's where the ball join tool comes in. And it comes in 3 or 4 different options up here. You've got a T-intersection, a right angle intersection, or a cross intersection. So you just choose the one appropriate. In my case it's T. And then just select the 2 components, left click, and it'll join them together. So just left click, there we go, it joins them up. Obviously we can do the same thing with a cross or an L. Just underneath the wall tool we've got the round wall tool, which is rather self-explanatory. It's much like the polyline or polygon tool. You can see I've just made a curve there. Let's see if I continue on from that as well. Jump back into here. So that can be used to create some crafty walls if you need them for backdrops or sets, that kind of thing. Duplicate mode for symbol, we'll jump over that, and you can obviously remove sections of the wall, but these are the important ones here, the door and the window tool, which we're going to go into quite a lot of detail in. Doors are often something that are quite essential to your plan. Mainly, I find the important thing with doors is to get the sizing right so that you know what you can take through them. Particularly if you're doing a venue drawing, it's going to be very important for anyone who comes into your venue to know what they can get through a doorway. So therefore measuring is obviously important, but also placement. So I'm going to place this door down here, and you'll see there's a couple insertion options. You can do a left hand side align, center, right hand side, or align to the origin, which is pretty much the same as center, unless you're doing an offset door. And as you can see with this one here, it's rather symmetrical, so therefore it's probably going to be the center. If you had, say, an odd double door of some variety, the origin might be slightly different. Going through the pen up here and the spanner, if you click on this, it brings up a really intense door setting panel, and inside here there's so much information, everything from the width and the height, probably the most important things inside here, using a current symbol. You've got top shapes, so if you want a rounded top, if you want a square top, has it got a transom, how does it fit in there, is it a double door, is it a single door, has it a pocket door, all the different varieties are inside here under configuration. And then you can go right down the list here. This is something that you might just have to explore in your own time, but you've got visualization styles, 2D and 3D, and then all the different components jammed. The leaf, is there side lights included, all of the different footings, tops, parts. I'm sure if you have some sort of maker background, then you'll know what's going on here. So I'm just going to accept the simple door for now, and I'm going to edit some afterwards. So the important thing with the door is to make sure that when you get onto, or when you approach a wall, you can see the door actually just snaps into it. It locks in the moment you get near it. And you really want to make sure that's what happens when you get your door here. You can just place them down regularly, but they won't actually be attached to a wall. They won't do a cutout by themselves. It just won't even matter. You'll see when I get here and click on this section though, and I get to choose a direction, I'll discuss direction in a moment, it actually cuts the segment of the wall out where you've put the doorway in. So you can see it's actually taken that bit of wall out and put the door in, not only in the plan view that we're currently in, but also here if I look in the side view, it's cut a section of the wall out for that door. So an important thing about placement, once you've chosen your location for your door, you get 4 different options, and it works in a quadrant system. So if you think about me heading currently northeast out here, I've got one orientation. If I head to the next quadrant, which is 90 degrees around from that, I get the second orientation, the third orientation down here in this corner, and the fourth orientation up here. So you can just switch between your orientations by crossing those center points. And then once you're happy, just second click to finalize. It's pretty straightforward. Apart from that, you've got a lot of options down here in your object info panel. You can flip the door in all 4 of those directions. Here we go. You can change its positions. The settings tab will bring up that dialog from before, the massive one with all of the settings inside it. And then you've also got all of those here available to you as a listing view, so you can change your width and height really easily. You can change the shape, the swing, and everything else about it. There's a couple of checkboxes in here that you might like to be aware of, mainly this one here for rendering, show 3D open. If you check that, it will show the door at that open angle there, which can be greater than 90 degrees as well if you wish for your door to be leant back even further. You can put ID tags on if you would like to label your doors in some sort of way, so you can say entry through door number 7 for example. You can do all of that kind of thing. I think that's about all for that. Just be aware, obviously, when you change your door type, for example, if I put another door in over here, I'm going to make this a double door. What you'll want to do is change the configuration to a swinging by part, which puts it in 2, and then just in the width, just throw a ×2 inside there, which will make it back up to the regular size. The configuration has to confine by your width and height specifications at the time of creation, so obviously we just need to double that afterwards or before. So moving on from there, we've got the window tool, and it's very similar to the door tool itself. Same kind of functionality. When you approach a wall, it will lock into place. And I'm just going to put one here, but the thing you'll notice is that with the window there's no real distinction between the across directions here. You can't see very much, so the important thing with the window is to always just choose the outward facing wall. So in this case I've clicked on my exterior of the wall, brings up a whole heap of options in here, but I'm going to jump straight in and click the settings button to have a look at what's going on. Once you're inside here, it's a very similar layout as I said to the door tool. You've got the top shape, you can insert a transom if you'd like there, so I'm going to make this round. I'm going to put a transom in, which is just a midway marker essentially. You can adjust those heights as well, and then you've got your width and height down here as well as the sizing of it. You can change the window type as well. I'm just going to jump on down to here where we've got the different types of windows. So you just basic fixed glass. You can have single and double hung, your casement types, which is what we've currently got. You can do a bipart as well, which has a little fold inside there, and I believe can open as well. Horizontal sliding, as you can see from this picture here, it's kind of an older style of house sliding window. Awnings, tilting and turning, so I'm just going to leave it on this one here, tilt and turn. We'll see what happens. Hit OK. So with my tilt and turn, once again, going to show the 3D open and change my open angle to about 45 degrees. If you have a look here in my 3D view, I might choose a better one than what I just chose. There's our window there, and it's showing an open currently of 45 degrees. Throw that into a render so we can see it a bit, and that's not looking too bad. So that's windows and doors. There's some stuff about positioning as well. You can move these along. When you've got one of these selected and you hit Control M, which is normally our XY move, you'll get a different dialog box, which is a bit crafty. It's basically just an offset within the wall, and you can see it's related to the drawing style of the wall. So offset, type in a number, say 100 millimeters. You can choose a direction, this way or this way. It's pretty simple, and then hit OK, and it nudges it along the wall section. When you're actually drawing doors though, I find it a lot easier to mark it out. So for example, if I want it to be halfway through this wall, I'll just measure this, go to the halfway point, which is here. Let's see if I get that correct. 3205. I can just type divide by 2 in there. So I'll normally mark out whenever I'm doing a plan this, and then I'll find my door, make that my marker point, make sure I zoom in and lock it in. You can see how I've approached that corner, it's snapped, and I'm inside the wall. Left click, choose a direction. Let's say this one opens outwards, probably a cupboard, and there we go. And it takes a moment for me to load my object info over there. So now I'm just going to set you a small task to do with this. Just going to get you to draw a simple building. The important thing though with this one is to draw it to scale. So I'm going to pull up a building plan now, and we'll see how we go.
A lost cause. Go on without me. Save yourself.
No, we're all going. We have to shake things up before we officially become boring. I say we go dancing. I'm in. Let's go dancing. Okay.
So here we have a great drawing of Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City's apartment, drawn by Inaki. I've put some dimensions over the top and just labelled up a few bits and pieces. But your challenge is to have a go at drawing this as close to scale as you can. Try and follow the dimensions just in terms of practice and styling. You can take a bit of artistic license obviously on some of the walls in the wardrobe and some of the indentations that come in and out. But give it a go. Give yourself, I don't know, maybe 15-20 minutes, and we'll see next week how I go with this puzzle. So hopefully you're having fun doing Carrie Bradshaw's apartment task. But while you're doing it, I'm just going to discuss the resource browser, or after you've done it, I guess. I haven't done mine yet. I'm going to save it for next week, but I am going to make a start on the resource browser. Now what I've done here, and I'm going to take us back to a plan view, this image that I've inserted, which I'll hopefully put in the video description, I've just imported that from the file import image file here. I've just placed that into my drawing, and I've made sure that this here, the plane, is set to layer. So what I can do when I get my 3D rotation tool, and just pop that right there in the middle, is that I can actually move this in a 3D environment so I can see it as a planar object. So you can see it moves with my 3D goodness going on as I fly around it. Now we're going to use the resource browser to bring a few items into this apartment and show you how you can use the massive library that comes with Vectorworks to import items that can help you with your set designs, with your building designs, with your interior designs, etc. So I'm going to go up here to the window, and I'm going to choose my palettes and turn on my resource browser. Control R apparently for me. I'm pretty sure it's Apple R for you guys as well. And it'll pop in like this, a little blue bar, and you'll get this, the resource browser. Expand it out a bit. You probably need a lot of space to use it. You can see up the top it lists my current files. I've got a couple open at the moment. I'm on Untitled 1. No, I'm on Untitled 2 at the moment. That's my current document. And you can see I've got nothing in here at the moment except some glass that must have come in when I put a window in. So that's fine. You can also see the resources top level up here. If you have subfolders underneath, for example, if you make a folder for chairs, if you make a folder for windows, if you make it for miscellaneous items that are on the bench top, you can put them inside folders and organize them that way as well. We're going to jump right over that and talk about symbols though. And I'm going to show you how to create a symbol. This one here I'm just going to draw is going to be a 2D symbol. I'm just going to quickly whip up, get a rounded rectangle in there, and I'm going to pretend that this is a bed. I'm also going to pin this open so it doesn't disappear. Now symbols are effectively items that you can use over and over again and change the base component so that they all change. So what does that exactly mean? I'm going to go up here to my modify menu and choose create symbol. Once you left click on that, you get a fair few options. Where is the insertion point, which basically means is it in the center or is it at your next mouse click? What units does this symbol contain? Can it be inserted into walls? I don't want it to be inserted into walls. And you've got a couple other options. Leave the instance in place because it will take my object away when I do this. Change the 2D objects from layer plane to screen plane, which means they'll get stuck on our windshield. And you can convert everything to a group as you go. Also, importantly, up the top is the name. I'm going to name this Bed01. This is my first attempt at a bed. Hitting OK, and choose the location, Untitled 2, our current project. I'm going to click OK, and you'll see it disappears from here, but it will come into, and I just have to go display active document, it will come into our Untitled 2. You can see here, bed, it's got a little 2 next to it, meaning it's a 2D symbol. It's got the title and a little image representation. If you don't have that, you can right click, go view as, and there's thumbnails or list. So list shows it as a list, thumbnail shows it as small pictures. Now what this allows me to do is drag copies of this bed out from here and plonk them onto my page. So you can see I've got one, drag another one out, drag another one out. So it's handy if you're going to do a lot of similar things. What else are symbols used for? Well, by right clicking on this symbol and going edit, I can jump inside the symbol. If it has 2D and 3D components, you can jump between them. Also, if it's a wall hole, and also some symbol options. I'm going to choose 2D component because that's what we're looking at the moment, and I'm going to hit edit. So you can see I didn't like the size of that pillow originally. I actually think it should be a bit smaller. So I'm just going to take 100mm off each side, 100 off there, and 100 off there. I might also like to put some bed sheets on this, so let's just represent those with this line here. And just while we're at it, I may as well round that out as well. What do we got? 20. It's probably going to be a bit large. Oh no, that's okay. There we go. And maybe on the corners as well. Cute. So I've upgraded my symbol there slightly. I'm going to click exit symbol, and what you'll notice is that all of these other symbols have changed. They've all gone to match this original symbol, which is really handy. Now you can create a 3D symbol as well. I'll try and do one here out of some advanced objects, maybe just a sphere and also a cone. I'll just pop those on top of each other. Extrusion height, let's say, what are we working at the moment? Meters. Awesome, that's such a good symbol. So I'm going to create that as my 3D symbol. So same thing, modify, create symbol, and I'm going to call this strange cone. That sounds pretty good. Click OK, hit OK, and there we go, it's disappeared. You can see I've got strange cone now, and it's a 3D symbol. So dragging that out, you can see, there it is, my strange cone. There it is again. I'm looking at an isometric. We'll see that there's probably 2 or 3 of them sitting there. When my computer wakes up, there we go. Now, that's all well and good. The advantage of 2D and 3D symbols is that they can merge together. And what you'll find is that if you have a really, really detailed 3D object, sometimes when you're in this plan view moving things around, you really don't want to have to render all of those details that lie underneath. Vectorworks has a solution for this, which is when you're in a plan view, like I'm in now, it represents an object as a 2D component, and when you need the 3D data, it will pull the 3D data out for you. Now, this is pretty easily achieved, and I'm going to get rid of our cones here, and I'm going to focus on our bed. If I grab the contents of the bed out again, I'm going to click edit, and hit edit again. I'm going to pull this out, copy that data out of there, and I'm going to paste it here on my page. So that's the 2D representation of my bed, but I also want a 3D representation of a bed, and I'm going to draw it right next to it, just by copying all of the same components and making it into 3D for this example. So I'm going to extrude that pillow out. Let's say, what size are we at the moment? Width and height. So that's just smaller than a standard bed. Let's call it 150. The mattress can also be 150, and our sheets will just do a small layer on top that are about 5mm. So if I have a look at that, there it is. We're just going to use our move 3D command, which is not that, it's Control Alt M for me, or for you guys it is Control Alt M for me. I think for you guys it's Apple Alt M. I'm going to choose the Z offset of 150 in there, which pops that up for me, and I'm also going to do the same thing with my bed sheet. Control Alt M, 150. And just to make this even more advanced so we can see the difference, I'm going to fillet the edge of this pillow, just this edge here. Constant radius of, what do we say, 150, about 25. Alright, so it's not the most comfy bed in the world, but you get the idea that I've made a 3D bed now. So going back into our plan view, we've got the two sitting side by side. We've got the 3D component, which I'm going to group together, and we've also got the 2D component, which I'm going to group together. Now here's where the fun begins. We grab our 2D object and place it directly on top of our 3D object. So we should have two groups underneath there. One which is full of 2D components, and one which is full of 3D components. What we do is once again go to modify and create symbol. This time I'm going to call it the bed 02, and in brackets 2/3D. That's not essential to this, I just wanted to distinguish them for the time being, even though it'll have a little symbol down there saying 23D. Hitting OK, and hitting OK again, you'll notice it disappears, and now it's in here, and you can see it's a bed, and if I hover over it, it says 2D/3D symbol. When I drag it out here, you can see it looks like the 2D version. The moment I go to my 3 view though, you can see it swaps into the 3D version. 2D version, 3D version. You can see my other 2D versions that I had over here of bed 01, they're still flat 2D versions, and this one's got the 3D component inserted. You wouldn't even know the difference from above. So that's really handy. That's how you make 2D and 3D symbols, and that's what we're going to explore now with the importing options. So you can go to the SketchUp library, you can get them from the Vectorworks library, you can get them from a whole variety of places. I'm going to show you the ones that come from the Vectorworks library, and we're going to have a play with some of the categories that you can explore throughout them. So choosing the browser document option up here, you can make these favorite files when you find one that you like. I'm going to have to find my Vectorworks folder, which is C, Program Files 86 for me, down to Vectorworks 2013. Inside your libraries folder, you'll find a whole heap of things in here. So we've got objects. There's the objects entertainment, which contains speakers, lighting devices, that kind of thing. Building services, which is mainly to do with lamps, bathroom fittings, tap fittings, a couple of columns, that kind of thing. There's miscellaneous objects, which is cars, people, trees sometimes, some miscellaneous engineering stuff, and some kind of circuitry bits and pieces. Landscape and site, that's got a bit more trees, it's got excavation stuff, it's got seats, park benches, all that kind of stuff. And then the architecture and interior one, which is one we're going to have a look at now. So within each of these, you'll see there's some general labels kind of thrown here, like for example furniture residential. When you choose one of these, inside it's a package. It contains, I don't know, 30, 100, 200 objects, depending on the size of the file. So you can see some of these, for example, the furniture office, which is quite small. That's probably not going to contain a whole heap, whereas this residential one, it will have quite a lot in it. So I'm going to go for that, residential, open. Now that'll take a moment to load, and when it does, you'll be presented with this. Inside your resource browser, you'll have a whole heap of new stuff. So I've got line types to begin with. Clearly they're using some different lines within these symbols. I've got rendered textures, so there must be at least a few textures in here, a whole heap of glass and some wood and that kind of thing. And then we get to the fun stuff, the symbol library. And as you can see, it just starts off and there's a whole heap of symbols within here. I've got beds, I've got couches, I've got chairs, I've got vases, I've got everything I could ever want, really. And it's as simple as this. To get one of these, for example, this chair here, let's see if we can find one that's kind of similar. I'm going to drag it in and have a look. Drag it, plonk it on your page. It'll say, do you want to import it into your document? Yes, I do. Click OK, and there's a chair. Now it's a little bit big for me, but that's okay because we can scale these if Vectorworks will let us. I'm also going to rotate this around and have a look at it. So I'd like it in this orientation. Clearly I'm still on a duplicate mode, so I'm going to get rid of that base chair under there. Okay, and that's pretty good. Some scaling. I'm going to turn symmetrical scaling on, and I'm just going to scale this object, so up and down, same as if you'd gone to the modify scale objects. So I'm going to try 1.5, which is actually the wrong direction. So we'll try a 0.75 scaling on that. That's looking pretty darn close. I'm just going to drag that over a section, nudge that into place, because it's okay for doing this. And although it's not the same chair, obviously, I'm just giving this a typical example. So looking at that in a 3D view, much like The Sims, if you ever played that video game, all of a sudden you've got that chair sitting in that position. And if you look at that in a rendered view, you'd see that there's our lovely chair being plonked into position. My render doesn't stay consistent when I move, but it does pick it up. So I'm going to go ahead and put a bed in here as well. Let's see if we can find a bed within our residential set. Certainly a couch. I think I saw them up above before. Excellent. So if we got a nice double bed there. I don't think Carrie has a bed head, but we'll go with this one here. Once again, preserve the hierarchy. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Place that into there. Once again, it needs a little bit of scaling, so I'm just going to scale that to 0.8. Let's try that. That's not too bad. And once again, if I throw myself into a 3D view, you'll notice that I now have a 3D bed sitting there as well. Render that and we'll see if it's... oh, it has got some textures on it. But that's pretty cool. Instantly, I've given this a little bit more depth than I had before, and obviously if I'd done the previous task, I'd have my walls up, I'd have everything there, I could start putting my kitchen in, put clothes in the wardrobe, etc, etc. So just have a brief moment to play with that, and we're going to use the find feature after this. So once you've done that, I'm going to use the find feature to see if I can find something custom in particular for this place. Maybe I'm going to search for a coffee table. No, actually no, a desk. Let's search for a desk. So from the drop down out here, I'm going to choose the second drop down option and go find resource. So this is if you don't really want to spend the time searching through for a car, for a human figure, for something like that within all your files that you've got available to you, you can do a search. So I'm going to choose all files on disk, and you can see it's automatically chosen my C program files for Vectorworks, and for you guys on a Mac it'll be a similar file path under your applications Vectorworks 2013 libraries. I'm going to search for everything that includes a desk, and this first time that you search it does take a long time, so this is a warning. So I'm going to click find and I'll see how long it's going to take me to do the first little section. I'll pause and then jump back in right at the end. So you can see it's counting at the moment, counting. Yeah, it's going to take a little while. But as I said, every time you do it, it does speed up because it catalogs the library. So you can see it's currently burning through that. It's got nearly 5,000 different files to search through at the moment. So I'm going to hit pause on my video and I'll jump back when we're at the end. Okay, so I finished searching through all of that. Just finished a moment ago. I just missed the 99% marker. But you can see it's given me a fair few options here. It's given me quite a long list of things that involve a desk. So I've got some desktops here, that looks, and you can follow the file path out as well. So that's under the equipment, office equipment. So office desks, looks like we've got some other desktops as well. We've got an office desk that's within the furnishing and scenic elements. Two of those which are kind of irrelevant. We've got a pedestal desk, some desks under the furniture, some oval desks. So there's quite a lot here. I could just choose one of these at random. I'm probably going to try this office desk out and see how that looks. Hit select. And what it'll do is it'll take you to within that folder. So it's taking me within the furnishing and scenic elements, and it's inside the office at the moment where it's found that desk. And I can just click and drag that out, plonk that on into place. It's going to ask me once again to import that into my current document. and it's obviously a little bit large, but once again, thanks to 2011-2012 object scaling, we can now scale these objects up and down. So I'm going to put a 90-degree rotation on that and choose my scaling, make that about 0.7, see how that fits, maybe slightly smaller, a bit of a 0.6 on that. That's not too bad. Shuffle that on into position, have a look at that in a 3D view and render it out, and that's pretty much exactly what I wanted to put there. So you can see how easy that was. Just type in a general term that's under this second drop down arrow and find, and you just want to make sure that you have your files on disk selected with your current Vectorworks library. Type in your search term and away you go. So that's pretty cool. I'm rather happy with that, and we're going to move on. So we're going to move away from Carrie's apartment now and just talk about one last thing before we end this lesson, because I think that's probably just about enough for now. The last thing I wanted to talk about is a 3D technique, and I don't actually require Carrie's apartment for this, so I'm just going to open a new document up. Cool. So we're going to talk about a technique called lofting, and you might have heard me mention this in lesson 2, and we just touched on the 3D stuff going on in here. You'll find lofting inside here under loft surface. And what lofting does is it's kind of like one of those CAT scans that you see on the medical movies all the time, where they slice the brain and the skull up into several sections. This is the reverse of that, where you have several sections and you turn them into a 3D object. Now, the typical example that I normally start with is some sort of drink bottle, and I've got one sitting in front of me right now. It's just a Mount Franklin water bottle, and what I'm going to do is just kind of cut that down in my mind into a series of circles. So if I was just to draw this out, and I'm just going to guesstimate some values out here, I'm just going to say that's about 80 mil. So that's a good starting point for me. I'm going to type in 40 in here. And I'm just going to change my units, because from one of my previous demonstrations that I just recorded, I adjusted that to more than 3 decimal places. So this is my base circle, as I'm going to call it, and I'm just going to copy and paste this in place a few times. I've got 4 copies of it now. And what I'm going to do is just scale it down. I'm going to say that's about one size that I need. Then I'd also like one that's about this size. I'd like one that's this size. I think there's one more. And then we'll taper out there. Send that to back. Maybe one more. It's just for good measure. Somewhere there. Now you're probably going, well done, you've drawn some circles that all correlate to each other, James. This is a great success for you. And it is. So what we're going to do is select all of these objects and we're going to convert them. So from the modify menu, we're going to choose convert to NURBS. Now NURBS are just 3D curves. Essentially they're pretty much 3D polygons. They've just got some extra mathematical data for them that allows them to be super special and super quick for rendering. So I'm going to ungroup those now. I did that with Control U or Apple U for those of you on a Mac, and you'll see up the top now I've got 6 NURBS curves. And if you have a look here in my 3D view, you can just see the circles laid out there. What I'm going to do, just for my purposes right now, is select each of these. So I'm going to, actually I might do the whole lot. I'll do everything except the base one. I'm going to hold down Control Alt and hit M, and I'm just going to move these just to get some separation happening. So I'm doing 100 on that one, then I'm going to do another 100 on this one. I'm going to do 200 on this one. I'm just separating them out essentially. I could have done this by clicking and dragging, but I like using the maths. So 300 on that one. And the last one needs a little 100 boost in there. And hopefully, yep, there we go. You can see that I've started doing this. And essentially I've just laid those circles out. So I'm going to look at that in a front view now. There's all our circles. There's one hiding down here that you can't see. There it is. They're in biggest to smallest now, and I'm going to use them to create a bottle. So I'm just going to bring this one down a fraction, somewhere about there. I'm going to hold down my Control key and copy that. So I'm going to say that's about the height of my lid. Then I'm going to bring this up to here, and I'm just going to nudge that a fraction to there. I'm going to copy that, paste it in place. I'm allowed to use the nudge tool because this is an example. Somewhere down to there, then it goes in again, so I'm going to copy this one once again, Just pop that somewhere in about there. And then there's quite a big jump out for me. Something like that. So it kind of tapers out from here to here. And you'll see, if you're not quite understanding, just bear with me for the next 2 or 3 minutes. So that I can explain what the hell is going on. So it goes out to here. Then goes out to here. Say it stays a consistent value. So I'm just holding down control there once again. Might taper down to something like that. Let's just say that it stays pretty consistent. Comes out to a larger size, and then my largest size is there at the bottom somewhere. And for the purposes of this exercise, we'll copy this one and place that all the way down here at the bottom. Somewhere there. Now what you might be able to see, just by looking at this, is an outline of a shape. And if you just imagine these, and I'll do it in 3D, it's kind of the outline of my water bottle that I've got sitting in front of me. But that's not really good enough. We're going to look back here in this front view, and we're going to grab the loft surface option. There's 3 different modes up here. We're going to use the first mode for this, which is no rail mode, and I'll explain what rails are after I do this. But just no rail mode in this case means that I've traced all the different cross sections of this object that I'm going to make. So I'm going to just start here. I'm going to left click on this object, and starting me on this side. This object, this object, this object, this object, and you can already see what's starting to happen. This object, this object, this object. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Now if you have a look, you'll see that that's actually traced out the object, or at least the side path of it, and give it a nice curve. I could probably do with one more in the middle here so that doesn't dip as much, because it's trying to calculate that as a nice smooth curve going through there, but I'm just going to go with this for now. So up here in the top left hand corner we just have one option, which is a tick. It says click here to complete the operation, otherwise press the enter key. So I'm going to tick the box and I get this, the loft creation screen. Now there's a lot of curves in here, and you can see as I click next it'll flow through them. You mightn't be able to see it on your screen quite there. But these are the options that you want down here. Ruled, so at the moment we're on curved mode. Ruled essentially means join the dots, or in this case circles, but keep it really straight. Don't follow this curve that we've got going on here. We've got closed, which means that this loop here can end up back at this loop here, and I'll try and show you an example like that. Essentially we're talking like a donut kind of shape for that, where you come back to the start again. You can create a solid, which is what I want. I don't want this to be hollow within my circles, I want it to be solid. And you can choose to keep the curves, which is much like the retain option. It just means after I've made whatever I'm going to create, would you like these circles afterwards? I don't particularly need them. I'm going to hit OK. So that error that I've just received, which is down in my bottom corner there, I think I know why. The issue is twofold, and I was just looking at that curve there for a section. I think this is too steep to actually calculate, so I'm just going to duplicate this one here, and I'm also just going to make another circle that fits midway into here, and I'm just going to make the radius of that, here we go, radius, what do I want? 30, probably want to take off 5, so let's say 25ish. Yeah, let's give that a go. Does that still look alright in my 3D? Yep, yep, yep. So I'm just going to try that again. I can work from the bottom this time just to mix it up. So loft surface, no rail mode, and here we go. Click, click, click. We'll see if we can calculate that out. I think there was just some intersecting geometry going on there. And that's going to be a bit wonky-tonky. You could probably do that there as a cylinder to get the cap correct, but we'll see what happens. So hit that, hit OK, there we go, that's looking more like it. So what you can see now, even though it's a bit globby at the top, let's ignore that for now, but I've actually got myself a water bottle now. Everyone see that? You'll see it even more if I render that here. I'm just going to de-check it so we get horrible lines gone. But you can see that I've actually created a water bottle there. That's looking quite nice. So obviously we could put a label on that, we could make it translucent, put some water inside it, and all of these things we're actually going to learn how to do next lesson, lesson 5, because that's our rendering and textures lesson. Probably the most fun lesson you'll do for this component. But that's lofting. Let me see if I can try and do some other examples for you. So going back here into our top-down view, I'm just going to use another circle. There we go. And I'm going to once again convert that to a NURBS curve. So looking at that in a front view and grabbing my rotation tool, I'm going to do this and put it on duplicate mode while I'm at it. I'm going to put one here, for example, another one out here somewhere. I'm just doing this really arbitrarily. Down there, and one to there. Now what I'm going to do is grab my loft surface again, no rails mode once again. I'm just going to click through all of these. Click, 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 click. I'm not going to do the last one. I'm going to hit the tick. I get this. Create solid, but I also want this to be a closed object. So you can see it finalize that last little section there. See how it's unclosed, closed. Create a solid, hit OK. And what we've ended up with here is a donut. A shape that you wouldn't normally be able to craft that easily, especially with these smooth sides. You could certainly do a cylinder, subtract a cylinder, and then use the fillet tool from the 3D toolset down here to create those inner edges. But that's far easier, and it allows you to create custom shapes as well, which is really handy. There's a lot of geometry stuff going on here, as you can see with the NURBS curve. I think you can actually reform these objects as well. Yeah, you can, which is kind of handy. Just because that's now converted to a NURBS surface that ends up with a whole heap of vertices and stuff, and it's amazing once you get into this kind of mapping thing. I've seen a lot of students from last year use this to do really creative backgrounds and backdrops. They've done some really nice cloth work. I'll see if I can find some examples, maybe even to show you guys later on in our video series about how you can effectively use this. But effectively, you want to use this for doing cloth, for doing canopies, for doing sand. It's very good at doing very natural objects and lofting things that you wouldn't actually be able to create normally. Now, an example of that is actually question 17 from the from Jim's set of technical drawings that I think was at the end of 2A, I believe. Yeah, 2A. And what he had there was this kind of train object, and I spent a lot of time thinking about how I would do it without lofting. I managed to do it with some 3D polygons, but this is the way that I actually would have done it had we learnt this lesson already. And I'm actually going to redraw Jim's object now. I'm just going to grab this tool here. From memory, it looks like it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 8 long, so I'm going to give that a width of 50 and a height of 80. I'm just going to plonk that in anywhere here on the page. Now, what you'll notice about this one is that it's actually been cut interestingly. The rectangle itself goes up 20, I believe. Let me check that's correct. That is correct. So it's been cut off in this kind of train gate idea. I'm going to subtract that from this object, and I also want to mirror it and cut it away from this one as well. So I end up with this. Now that's very good. That was the, if you think of that as the base of the object, but I also need the top of the object, which is a copy of this, pasted in place and moved up 20. So if you have a look here, I've done that, and I'm also going to clip off the rear end of this, like so. Grab that and clip the surface. So now I've got two components here, one here, a base object and a top object. I'm going to convert both of those to NURBS. From the modify menu, convert to NURBS. There we go, they've gone translucent. They've also become a group, which I'm now going to ungroup. So I've got two NURBS curves over here in my top right hand corner. One of them I'm going to leave on the 0 plane, and the other one I'm going to move. So I'm going to look at that in the front view for this example, choose move. My offset this time is going to be 40, so that's 40 positive in the Y direction, and what you'll see I end up with is this. Now this is where lofting really kind of kicks in, and I hope that you guys see how much easier this is if you've watched the episode. I think it's 3B that these guys come out in, maybe even the one after this, I can't remember. But what we're going to do here is choose our loft surface, click on one of these, click on the other one of these, and hit loft. Now what you'll notice here is that if I hit the preview button, it makes this object, which is exactly the object that we had for question 17. And it's so much easier than figuring around rotating 3D polygons and that kind of thing. Don't get me wrong, there is a time for 3D polygons and clipping them away, but to me, in my mind, when I first saw that, I instantly wanted to do this. Now I said that I will try the other two lofting methods, and often I have trouble doing these, so you'll have to forgive me if it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to, which it has in the past, unfortunately. So I've got lofting with one rail and lofting with two rails, and I'm going to try and show these to you. How am I going to do these? We'll do the one rail with this. So I'm going to grab my NURBS curve, and I'm actually just going to draw this line here, something like that. Okay, so I've just got a swirly line. What I'm actually going to do is look at that in a front view here, and I'm going to rotate it left. I'm just using Control L for that. So if we have a look at a 3D view, I've just got this kind of sine wave pattern happening. It's just a wave, essentially. I'll rotate around it so you can all see it. It's just a line, goes up and above the plane, and it also goes in this direction as well. So I'm going to call that the rail, and you have to think of the rail like a path, essentially, and you get an object to follow that path. This is much like an extrude along a path, which is something else that we haven't yet talked about, but we can at some point in time. We might even do it straight after this because it is slightly related to lofting. But essentially what I'm going to do as well is draw another circle. Let's use a circle. I'm just going to draw this in 2-point mode. So I'm going to draw it from here to here. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to turn it into a NURBS curve as well, just the same as we did, so convert to NURBS, and with this one I'm going to rotate this left as well. So what we've ended up with is a circle and a path. And what we've got here, when you look at the loft surface, is that when you click on this second mode, it says that you need one rail, so you need a rail, and then you need profile curves. And what we're going to use is this as the rail, and this is the profile curve. Just think of this as a train following a set of train tracks. So it says select the rail curve first, which is this one here. This is our rail, so I've left clicked on that. And then we want to select our profile curve, which is this circle. You see it gets a little joiny there. You want to make sure they're touching is another important factor, I believe. I think it might pull it into line, but we'll have to check. Once we've got a rail and a curve selected, we just want to tick the box. You get the same kind of creation options here, except we only get two options. Do we create a solid, which we do want. We don't want this to be hollow on the inside of the circle. You might in some scenarios, like skins or canvases, and you want to keep the curves self-explanatory. Do you want these two components afterwards? Hitting OK, you'll see this follows that line using the profile curve that we had selected. So if I have a look here and put that into a rendered mode, you can see we've made this kind of strange cylinder tubey thing going on, and it's just followed that all the way along right to the end. I'll rotate that around so everyone can see. It's just literally taken that oval and swept it all the way along the path using some curving there to make it happen. So seeing as we've just done that, I'm going to quickly jump and show you the exact same thing. I'm going to undo that all the way to here, but instead of our circle here, I'm actually going to replace this. So I'm going to jump here into my top plan view, and we're going to try a 2-rail mode. This is the one that's commonly the most difficult for me. I always seem to ruin it somehow. So there I've got 2 rails. I'm going to shift those rails in a sec, but in this isometric view here, I'm just going to draw another NURBS curve, and I find this one is normally best for draping objects. So I'm going to do a bit of that. And let's say that you've got a custom piece of cloth that we're making here that's got a certain flow to it. Maybe it's over some sort of a couple other objects underneath it, and you end up with a curvy pattern. So you can see I've got this, and I'm going to use this as my profile. So this is going to be run along the rails. Now this here, you could do this as a 1-rail mode. I could just get rid of that, and you could do that quite simply as a straight object. So to make this even more difficult and show why we need the 2-rail mode, we're going to grab this one here and give that a little rotate as well. So what we should end up with is sort of cone-shaped drape, I guess. We'll call it that for now, and you can go and have a look. So I'm going to click Loft Surface. We're on 2-rail mode up here, third option. Left click on the first rail, left click on the second rail, left click on the profile curve. There it is. Hitting OK. We end up with this. So I'm going to render that, and we're just going to have a flyover for a second so we know what we're dealing with. You can see it's made this crazy planar object that's expanded. You can see there's my profile that I've drawn. So it has that wave inside it, both in this plane and in this plane. And you can see that equally reflected on the backside here as well. Now also what that's done for us here, with all of these in fact, if I go back to a wireframe view, I should be able to double click on here and I get all these mesh points. Now this looks chaotic, and it really pretty much is. But if you look at this in a top plan view, or I'm going to hit the top plan view and double click on it here, the points are actually quite logical. So you've got endpoints, and then you've got divisional curve points that flow through here. And once you start reading U and V degree mapping, I guess it is, you'll really start to understand what's going on here. But this should have been broken into 3 sections across and about 3 sections up and down according to this degree mapping. If you watch, if I increase the U and the V, for example, if I make this 10 and 10, you'll notice that the complexity of the pattern actually increases. So here with a 10 and 10, you can clearly see how this pattern's been formed in terms of the UV meshing. You can also put some weight density on there. But if I float around this now, hopefully, and then double click on it again, you'll really see what Vectorworks is doing. And the more U and V degrees you have within these shapes, the more control you'll have over additional changes that you'd like to make, and the complexity of those as well. Now, before I mentioned that there were a couple other techniques that were similar to lofting, there's actually 2. So while we're in this category, we may as well talk about them. Can't really hurt to, and you had to learn about them anyway. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to go back to a plan view. That's looking good. The 2 other kind of deformed sister techniques of lofting, and one of them is very similar to lofting, and one of them is a little bit different but still follows some of the same principles. We're going to talk about extruding along a path, and we're going to talk about sweeping. So the first one that I'm going to do is grab this circle right here, do a bit of this. There, I've got a circle. Okay, what we're going to do is cut this circle in half. Like this. Same clipping technique that we always use to destroy stuff. Get rid of that. There we go. So now I've got half a circle. Now, I don't know if you remember in lesson 1, but I said the loci tool doesn't really have a function until you get to this point in time, some advanced 3D features. And this is where it comes in. Loci tool is basically setting the center of something. So I'm going to say that the center of this circle is here, the center of this semicircle. Okay, so I've got a loci acting as a center point, and I've got this semicircle here. Select over the top of the two of them, I've got 2 objects. I'm going to go up here to my model menu and choose the sweep command. What sweep does, and don't even worry about these figures because I'll tell you what they're for, but you don't have to change any of them at all. What sweep does is take the currently selected object and rotate it around the center point, and it does this in a horizontal fashion. So to explain that simply, I'm going to click OK, and what you'll see is it's taken that circle and it's spun it around in the 3D planes, that center point, and ended up with a sphere. The question would then be, what is the advantage over this sphere compared to the one that we have down here already going on for us in the 3D toolset? And the answer is pretty simple, for me at least. There's 2 differences. The sphere here is made from mathematical NURBS curves, which means that it's done by a formula, it's drawn really quickly, and it's infinitely detailed, which means that if I keep zooming in on that, because it's done by maths, it's always going to be infinitely detailed, I guess, because you can keep going in and in and in, and maths just keeps going, the answer is this, the answer is this, the answer is this, all the way to infinity. Here, not so much. This is drawn by an imperfect shape in this case. Although that circle was generated by something, it could be anything, and I'm going to demonstrate what that anything could be by double-clicking on it. What double-clicking on does is it gives me the original object underneath. Okay, and what I'm going to do to this object is actually modify it. I'm going to put this little tag on it, for example. So I'm going to hold down Shift, add those together, and what you want whenever you're editing these, you can see I'm in my orange windowed mode, is that you always want to end up with the same amount of objects that you had before you did the operation, which in this case is exit sweep. So it's going to apply a sweep to whatever happens here. So you can see that I want to end up then with 1 polyline and 1 loci again, which I've got because I've added those together. So by exiting, it does that operation, and I end up with this mad wheel-looking thing. I don't know, it kind of looks like half a yo-yo maybe. I guess that's the closest thing I can associate it to. But you can see instantly I've created an object which would normally be a little bit difficult to do, could be a little bit interesting to make, particularly if I go back into here. If I was to make one more change to this, it would become rather complex if I was to do that shape on there. This probably would have been quite tricky for you guys to do before this. See how that's just put that lip on there? you would have to create an object that has a fillet on one side and a sphere cut out of it on the other that would then cut into that object and blah 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 and have that filleted edge, and it's just easier. When you see it done like this, you can go, right, I know how to make a circular object that's woven around something. I can now make vases, I can now make wheels, I can now make custom fittings that might go on top of my roof. I can now make all these other different kind of things just by knowing that you can rotate something around a center point. Now, does it have to be a connected center point? The answer is no. So, in this example here, I'm going to make another custom object. For example, let's do this, and let's also do, I'm going to get that snap point, this. And I'm in fact going to, I was going to add those together, but I'm in fact going to clip them, which makes an even more interesting object. What I'm going to do this time though is get the loci, and I'm not going to attach it here. That would be a great shape, it would actually make a yo-yo. But what I'm going to do instead is actually offset the center point. Now, you saw me draw a donut before from a lofting, and that's why I say some of these are really kind of deformed cousins of lofting, or lofting is a deformed cousin of them. We're not really sure. The chicken or the egg, who knows.
Which come first, the chicken or the egg? Which come first, the chicken or the egg? How could something so fat and furry come from something so smooth and pearly? Which come first, the chicken or the egg?
But I'm going to select both of these and do the same operation, model, sweep, and without even looking at these, I'm just going to hit OK. You can see I've got a really wide object, far wider than that was before, and that's because I have this object here. I've got this giant yo-yo with a hole cut in the middle, and the spacing between there and there should be the distance that I set for my loci. Okay? The advantage of doing all of these, once again, is you can double click and edit them at any point in time. That basic 2D object, you could, for example, do the point that I wanted to do before, pull that out to there if I wasn't on addition mode, change that to format, exit, and it'll make the changes for you. Okay? So that's sweeping. The options that were there, if I go back in time a little bit to this point here, we'll have a look at those options just quickly, and they're really self-explanatory. It's the starting angle, the segment angle, arc angle, and the pitch. Okay? The starting angle, that's pretty obvious. Where is the start point? In this case it's 0 degrees, and it's related then to the arc angle, which is 360, which means it goes from 0 all the way around and back to 360, which is the start point again, because there's 360 degrees in a circle. So, by following that logic, if I typed in 180 degrees into here, we'd end up with a halfer. I'll show you, there's half of the object that I had before. Okay? Coming back to this stage here, if I go back in and I choose to do my sweep again from the model menu, we're going to look at these two other things, the segmentation angle and the pitch. Segmentation just basically refers to detail, and it's saying, I want you to check that you are getting this correct every 5.63 degrees. I'm not sure why it's chosen that number. It seems to be the same every time, so I presume there's a good reason for it. I haven't had a need to change it yet in terms of detailing. Pitch is a really interesting one though, and I'm going to guesstimate here that our object's about maybe 50 mil wide. So I'm going to type in 60 mil here. Now this is in millimeters at the moment. Pitch essentially says for every rotation, in this case 360 degrees, do an offset. So this will actually be offset when it ends back up on the other side. If you're not understanding what I mean, I'm going to click OK. And what you'll notice, I've actually made a spiral here, because it's taken this point here, I'm going to point to it with my mouse, and it said make sure that when you get back to 360 degrees, you're over here. Now, what can happen if we continued this on? I'm going to type in 720 degrees. What you'll notice is that we're making a spiral. Does anyone all of a sudden think, hey, if I have to do a technical drawing of a giant screw, if I have to make a cog that's got all these bits on it, if I have to make a spiral for a children's playground, how am I going to do it? You'll come back and you'll remember here that Vectorworks does all the maths that you needed to do spirals. Okay, so that's sweeping. The last one we were going to talk about is extrude along a path, and extrude along a path is really easy. You can do it with 2D, you can do it with 3D objects. Just for this exercise I'm going to do it with a 2D object, and I'm going to do this. Just going to draw an arbitrary object like so. There's one. I'm also going to use a hexagon. That sounds great. I'm going to do my hexagon here. Okay. My aim for this is to make a object that follows this path in the shape of a hexagon. To do that, it's quite simple. I've got this selected already. I'm going to hold down my shift key. I'm going to click on my hexagon. 2 objects selected up here in the top. Just remembering it's quite similar to lofting. It's got a path and it's got a profile. From the model menu, I choose extrude along a path. Left clicking on that, it asks me one simple question: which is the path object? Highlighted in red. You can go back, you can go forward. There's an important lock in here that I'm going to talk about in a sec, but I'm going to click OK, and it does this. Everyone see? It's followed that hexagonal shape. I'm going to put it in this view here and render it for you, all the way around that path that I had. Everyone see that? I'm going to go back in time a fraction here, to back when we had these 2 objects. And this time what I'm going to do instead is put a little marker on top of this. Going to add those together and do the exact same operation I did before, which was extrude along a path. Path object is this big one. Click OK. What you'll see, if I go into this rendered mode, is that our object has stayed upright the whole time. I don't know if you can see, but the hexagon's on the bottom. There's my hexagonal shape, and it's got that funny pointed bit that I made all the way around the top. Okay? What we're going to do is go back once again in time, and this time check one of those boxes here. Extrude along a path. This one here that says fix profile. Maintain the position relative to the orientation of the profile with respect to the path. Okay? Oh, I see. And I can't do that because it's not rotated correctly. If I grab this and rotate this. Okay, there we go. So my key's now pointing forwards. Okay, it's going to try and maintain this pointing forwards as it goes around our little racetrack. Holding down shift, left clicking, model, extrude. Fix profile. Okay. Now, what we're going to notice here, and it's done a little bit differently to what I thought it would, is that it's actually kept that pointing to the interior this time. Everyone see how this has kept it always facing to the inner side, which is kind of handy. I didn't think it was going to do that. I thought it would keep pointing north, but I'm pretty sure that's the other checkbox that we can investigate now. Going back to here, this time model, extrude along a path, locked profile plane. Yeah, that's what I thought it would do. So it's gone to the outside with that one. Okay, so they're a little bit tricky. They didn't actually go as I thought they would, but we've turned out finding out what they do anyway. So if you missed that, you can rewind about 1 minute and watch me fail all over again. So basically, one of them keeps it to the outside of the path, one of them keeps it to the inside of the path, in that example that I just did then. Just know that they're there. I don't know how often you use them. The only thing I ever really use them for is banister rails for staircases. I don't ever think, occasionally guttering. Guttering is the only other thing that you might end up using it for, just making a U-shape, following around the edge of the house, locking it off, done deal. So that's pretty cool. I think that's everything. Yeah, it is. That's all on my checklist. So I'm going to give you a little exercise to draw right now, and then we'll call it a day. Yarr, me hearties. Guess what you're going to draw? It's this ship. Hooray! Now, it doesn't have to be this exact ship, but I'm thinking a ship of this era. We're trying to do the whole sails, we're trying to do the whole body, and something really crafty going on with the sails and the masts and stuff. You now have the skills, and I know you do. If you're up to this stage of the lesson and you've watched everything that we've just done through here, you now have the skills to be able to do this. So I want you to try and construct that whole bottom of the boat using a loft. I want you to construct the masts, and the masts are tapered. So give that a go with lofting as well. Bigger circle at the bottom, smaller circle at the top. And you've got some other bits and pieces on there. Maybe you could try out a sweep for one of the crow's nests, and then I want you to try out some lofting for some sails. Okay, and sails are really easy. They're just one curve following a rail. Maybe if they taper inward slightly, you could do a double rail mode so that you get the taper at the top and the bottom. Have a go at it. Don't spend too long on it. You can do it if you're really enjoying it, but I would suggest just having a play for probably 20 minutes, half an hour on this, see how you go. I'm going to try and post a solution in the 4B video once I've made my sailing ship, and we'll see who wins. Okay, good luck. See you next time.